After the photo taking, let's have the next speaker, Mr. Wilfred Lau, Arup Fellow, Director of Arup, to share insights obtained from working on various leading projects. He will deliver a presentation titled Adapting Cities to Aging Societies. Mr. Lau, please.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank HKIUD for giving me the opportunity to share with all of you two studies that we have conducted and two research on aging, and these two self-funded study by the firm. Okay, aging, as we all know, is one of the greatest economic and social challenges facing the OECD countries, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, mainly of the European country, but also include Australia, Canada, and US. And it also represents a demographic shift that is unparalleled since the Industrial Revolution of 1750s. This graph, the one that is on the leftmost, shows that from 1950 to the year 2014, in these 64 years, elderly population, older people older than 65 have increased by 81%. In Asia, the situation is slightly different. During the last 50, 60 years, the growth in older population is not as fast. But in the next 30 to 40 years, we will witness a twofold increase in older population. The question is, are we ready to have double the older population? As we grow old, like myself, we get weaker physically. We move slower. Not only do we move slower, every year, every 5 years, we move much more slower than before. Not only does this have a physical change to our body, but this physical change also affects our emotional stress. Because as you know, some of you may realize, a lot of older people, they like to wear very colorful shirts, they like to wear very fashionable shirts, just to demonstrate that I'm not old. That is actually an emotional stress on themselves. So aging actually is a transformation of how we react, interact with the society that we live in. Now, we talk a lot nowadays about digital transformation. A lot of private sector, the firm talk about digital transformation. But maybe the private sector and the public sector should also be talking about aging transformation. I have to look at my notes, sorry, because in the last 30 hours didn't get any sleep, so I'm not as in the best condition as I was used to. Now, actually, the structure of society and the design of the built environment all have a role to play in treating, our older people. That is to say, older people ourselves have to adapt to society. But on the other hand, our built environment should also be adapting to this growing older, growing elderly population. What we see now is that we are seeing an increasingly heterogeneous within our older population. Actually, a large number of us, people like myself or people older than myself, are still living very active social life. Not only that, a lot of them are still economically productive. And a lot of them, it's not like before, they would need long-term health care or social care. But however, we see the phenomenon that all the older people are now experiencing something what we call an unconscious bias or unconscious discrimination from the society. And all of this actually is affecting the active living of older people within our society. Therefore, to better understand the dynamics between city structures, city system, and how older people live daily within the society, in 2014, we started a research on looking at 10 European cities and how these cities is dealing with the issue of aging population. These 10 cities, from Amsterdam, Berlin, all the way to Milan and Paris, was chosen on 2 criteria. First, those cities should be over 500,000 people, and this would jive with what we call the urbanization. And not only do they should be over 500,000 population, but then the change in the demographic makeup should be similar to what we would be expecting in the future. The second criteria is that there should be, for us, professional association in those cities. Like, for example, maybe we have an office there, or our partner, which is HelpAge International, Intel, Systematica, who work with us on this research, or they would have an office in those cities. The reason being that then we assure the data and the information we collect are reliable. And the study focused on the society, the built environment, the mobility of older people, and digital transformation. Let's take one of the case studies of Milan. We have chosen a residential area in Milan, Galatasaray, and this district is a residential neighborhood where the daytime population is smaller than the nighttime population. We find that from 1951 to 2014, the increase in older population over 65 had increased by 200%. People over 75 years of age increased by 500%. But I think the next statistic is very interesting. We find that 42% of people over 80 years old actually live alone. And there is only 1.4 what we call economically active person supporting all of this older generation. And this, from a workshop and from our interview, these are some of the comments from the older people that in an older district, I cannot see the street, and it's difficult to get on the bus because the first step is so high that I had difficulty in getting on. And most of the facilities, social facility, is in the north part of the district where they cannot walk, so they have to take a bus. So all of this is giving them a difficulty in negotiating to where they want. Now, all of this also tells us that all of these people, they have a sense of loneliness and that they lack the real scope of living actively. So how do you address, all this? Is the next question. In our study, and also through HelpAge International, we find that most older people do not like, and they should not be treated as a special class of people, like they are handicapped. So the word elderly, we try to avoid from now on, is that we have two types of people, young people and old people. Some are older, some are younger. And all the cities that we have investigated actually fail to respond to this aging population. And there is a lack of policy support to remove any and all form of discrimination based on older age. So some of the recommendations from this first part of the study, we are doing a second phase study now on this 10 European cities in order to come up with actual recommendation on design guideline, etc., on how to make the city more age-friendly. We feel that in the first part of the study that it should be more inclusive. We should not treat people in old age, as I've said before, as a separate group in the society. There are many ways to do it, except, for example, improve community cohesion, inclusive spaces. We should design and provide more inclusive spaces, and we should invest more in social infrastructure. Enable city. The city should better enable the built environment to cater for the needs of older people, such as guarantee easy accessibility, proximity, diversity, ensure safe and secure public space, and provide affordable and adaptable housing for the elderly, or the older people, sorry. Mobility is very important because this would mean, the social life, of older people. So the city should be what we call an accessible city. We need to improve the mobility to include all members of our society, not just the young, not just the middle-aged, but also the older people. The last is that the city should be able to assist, all these older people, such as there should be more use of modern technology to facilitate older people to remain, active, in the society, such as getting more, information, etc. With the findings of the European cities, last year we have started another research in Asia, in which we try to understand, is Asian city age-friendly to older people? How is the current status? Because as we understand it, in the next 30, 40 years, we will have double, the amount of older people in Asia. This is also a study that we work together with Help Age, International. And we do this through the lens of an urban planner and a designer, looking at the built environment. We have chosen 4 cities. And the reason that we have chosen these 4 cities is that we look at, the aging profile or the population profile of many countries in Asia. And we have chosen the top 6 actually to start with. And we choose 1 city in this top 6 countries. Now, there's two geographic area that is not on the list. One is Thailand, as the Honorable Bernard Chan have said, because Thailand actually would have a very fast growth of aging population. Now, Thailand, the current proportion of people over 60 is only 16%. But by the year 2040, it would reach 38%. Now, Hong Kong now has less older people than Japan, but by 2040, Hong Kong will have 41% of the people, older than 60, which is ahead of Japan, which Japan is stay around 35, 36 by that time. Now, the reason that we did not choose Thailand and Taiwan is another one, is that because after working on it for a while, we could not find reliable data, so we have to drop it. We don't want, to do something where the data is not as reliable as we like it to be. So at the end, we work on Tokyo, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Seoul. So how did we do that? What are the bases that we use to measure age friendliness? Actually, World Health Organization has issued, a guideline on how to measure age friendliness. And they suggest that you measure it, in 8 dimensions. We investigate and we find that actually 4 of those dimensions is concerning the built environment. And so these 4 form the basis of our study. Based on the 4 dimensions from WHO relating to measuring the age friendliness, we have dissect our understanding of the built environment into 3 elements: mobility, living environment, and social life. And we have also derived 11 what we call indicators to measure whether these cities are age-friendly or not. We've done it as a 3-part study. First, we would like to examine the policy to see if there is policy support. By policy, it's not just government policy, but also planning guidelines and design standards. Then, of course, it would not be right if we don't talk to the older people. Like what Honorable Bernard Chan has said, not only has it been top-down, it's been bottom-up. So we carry out interview survey in those 4 cities with older people with the help of a market research firm. Last, and we are in the middle of doing this, we would interview expert or professional practitioner in the field to seek their opinion. And these are some of the preliminary findings that I would like to share with you. First, in terms of the policy and the guideline, Hong Kong is strong on what we call the universal design. This is something like a Japanese term. Professor would be very familiar with it. But the weakness is on the social integration. Tokyo, very strong on the social, but a bit weak on the universal design. Now, although we said from the policy, from what we have studied on paper, there seems to be weak on the universal design. But actually, if you go to Tokyo itself, the built environment is very good, very generous, in terms of sidewalk and all that to help the elderly. Shanghai, the streetscape guideline is good, but the living quarters is not as inclusive as enough. So very strong on digital, of course, but the open space guideline, is kind of, weaker compared to the other cities. This, what we call radar diagram, shows the relationship of these 4 cities. As, the yellow one in the middle will show, Seoul. Now, how to read this is, if it gets closer to the edge, that means it's strong. Closer to the middle is weak. So you see, comparatively, Seoul, perform less well than the other 3 cities. Shanghai, which is red, and Tokyo, which is green, perform, quite well. Hong Kong also perform quite well comparatively, except on the social side. So I would use Hong Kong as an example to demonstrate, some of the initial findings. And we have not complete, the analysis of all 4 cities yet. So in terms of mobility, as I've said before, mobility is very important because this means whether, our society is inclusive or not, and it also affects, the social life, whether, older people can live an active life. You can find that about 2/3 of the respondents in Hong Kong say, it's easy to travel by foot, and about 60% say that there is no conflict with vehicle or bicycle because Hong Kong have built a lot of footbridge, subway, etc. And in recent years, actually, the government is installing elevator to the footbridge, to help, the elderly and disabled people in getting to the footbridges. And also on the access to public space, it is easy to walk. Hong Kong scored very well, 77%. But on the other hand, the use of modern technology, for older people, actually is not, does not score as well. Because of time, I will try to go as fast as I could. In terms of the social life, Hong Kong actually, performed very well, with 82% of people said there is sufficient public area in the estate where they live or in the building where they live where they can interact with the neighbor. And there seems to be sufficient open space within the district. Now, on the other facility, educational facility and support from social worker, Hong Kong don't really score that well. There doesn't seem to be enough educational facility if they want to do lifelong learning, and support from social worker comparatively is quite weak compared to other Asian cities. Employment opportunity is another area that Hong Kong could improve, because Hong Kong, a lot of the private sector and the public sector have a mandatory retirement age. So that's why it is quite difficult for people, older people, people over 65 to get employment. Even if they want to volunteer, they do not have as much opportunity compared to other cities. Living environment. Hong Kong scored quite well, and surprisingly, I was quite surprised at this actually. And because 60% of people said that they are satisfied with the housing option that is affordable to them. Affordability is very important for older people. But less than half of the people said the design of my unit, my flat, is actually friendly to me as a senior. As we know that a lot of the washroom or even the front door is not wide enough for wheelchair to pass through, or when you are on crutches, etc., it's quite difficult to pass through the door. Okay, because of time, I'm going to skip that. So summarizing, Hong Kong is, score quite well on, mobility, maybe not as good on living environment, but social life is something that we have to be more, look into a bit more, which is working opportunity, volunteering opportunity, support from social worker, and learning facilities. By 2030, 12 years from now, more than a quarter of the population in Asian cities will be over 65. And that means we would need double the facility that we have today in order to cater for this increase in older population. Now, many people already understand that urbanization and aging population are two trends in Asia. But, the sad part is the intersection between the two, or the dynamic between the two, have been neglected. If we have to make our older people live a happy, active life with dignity, we have to start to update our policy, our planning guideline, our design standard now, not tomorrow, not 5 years, not 10 years. And we cannot do it just on our own or leave it to the people in charge to do it. The older people should be included in the decision making and in the planning process in what I call this era of the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lau. Please be seated. As mentioned earlier, to promote the sharing of information globally for this conference, this event is streamed live online. So if you would like to see the stage activities and also the speaker's PowerPoint to be more clearly, you can also use your mobile device to watch the live streaming link, which the link QR code is on the booklet front page, the front cover. So you can scan the QR code and go to the website and click live streaming, then you can see the PowerPoint much more clearly.